Good evening. Good evening, friends. Welcome to Rutgers Presbyterian Church. We call it Church of Open Commensality, which means that our embrace is open to everyone, regardless of your gender, orientation, race, age, or your place of birth. Everyone is welcome here. I'm Pastor Andrew Stehlik. In this church, we have a number of our members who are foreign-born, and therefore our heart was really from the beginning pulled towards the work with refugees and asylum seekers and so on. This church sponsored over the period of last 10 years 5 refugee families in the number of about 20 refugees. We are sponsoring Refugees Employment Partnership and Asylum Support Clinic, and are affiliated with some other organizations and initiatives like Welcome Home New Jersey and similar. And it is marvelous to have you all here. We are Presbyterians, and we have a maxim that we try to do everything decently and in order. That's how we quote the Bible for ourselves. And I cannot tell you how distracted I am, and probably most of us, to observe the chaos which is right now happening in our city and around our nation. It is really something to be seen. And for that reason, I'm hopeful that today we will learn at least something into how to cope with this chaos and with this and how to deal with it. So welcome to Rutgers Presbyterian Church. And my final note, I was asked, please silence your cell phones.
Can everyone hear me? Okay, great. Hi, I'm Michael Ona. I'm just gonna move this down. I'm just gonna move this aside. Okay. Hi. I'm Michael Ona. I am one of the volunteer attorneys at Asylum Support Clinic, ASC. I'm also one of the members of the steering committee, and thank you for joining us tonight. I have the pleasure of introducing Mr. Muzaffar Chishti. Mr. Chishti is, among many other things, a senior fellow at the Migration Policy Institute at NYU Law. He has his mind sort of focused on the varying immigration issues at both the national, state, and local level. And has worked with and is working with several working groups, such as the New York Immigration Coalition, the American Bar Association's Working Group on Immigration, and many other organizations. And so I'm very honored to have Mr. Chishti present to us today. And afterwards, we'll have a brief Q&A session so folks can sort of reflect and ask you some questions.
Okay, you done?
Yeah.
So let me just use this because I should just keep my notes somewhere.
And just before you start,
can you hear me all right? Okay, good.
I just want to note really quickly, sorry. For folks' awareness, there is a photographer, volunteer ASC photographer in the room here tonight. If you don't feel comfortable being photographed, you can go to Emily and Emma in the back. They can kind of redirect you and position you so that you're not caught in the camera lens. Sorry. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you so much, and thanks so much for that generous introduction. The only thing you didn't mention that I'm a close friend of Kitty Krupp. That's the reason to be here for me this evening. So it's hard. This is obviously the issue du jour. a neighbor of mine who has nothing to do with immigration left me a message yesterday that I feel bad for you because immigrant is every second word in any spoken language these days, and tells you how much immigration has become the dominant issue, not only in our country, but across the world. And we are obviously in a new chapter with this administration, which we expected to be in. We're not quite sure as yet where we'll end in this chapter, but we are in uncharted waters. So I thought, what can I tell you in 20 short minutes to a bunch of very smart, committed people and be useful? So here it is. So I tell my young colleagues that you can read the executive actions, you can read the memos of this administration. Always pay more attention to what the president himself says, because he doesn't read anything. He doesn't even read the executive actions that he has signed. So anything that has seeped in his mind is the most important thing. And he said it twice on the day he was inaugurated, that he is completely convinced that he got elected on the issue of border security. He got elected this time, he got elected in 2016 using the border security as the calling card. Therefore, the deportation machinery to him is high on his list. And he has internalized that, and he has communicated that to all branches of his government. So the deportation machinery, which he tries to say is going to be mass deportation of all unauthorized people in the country, just for reference, it's now about 13.6 million people, is that every cabinet member of his has now assumed that the deportation machinery is #1 paragraph in their job description. Like, how can I appease the president, tell him I can use my cabinet to help you in the deportation machinery? With the result that we now have agencies of the government which have almost never had any role in immigration, which is AFT, the DEA, the US Marshals. They're still part of DHS, but we now have IRS examiners deputized in the enforcement of immigration. And so it's all of government in this enterprise. And then we have invoked the power to reach out to states and localities as force multipliers, and they are on notice to fully cooperate in this deportation machinery, that if they don't cooperate, many of their own officers may be investigated by Department of Justice, or that their funding is going to be cut if they do not fully cooperate with the administration. And now, to add to this, we have enlisted many foreign governments in this, what I increasingly call the global deportation machinery. And you saw the image of us deporting people to Panama, to Costa Rica, to Brazil, to Ecuador, to Colombia, as far as India, which have now become sort of the important exhibits in this enforcement machinery. So one of the reasons the government has been able to do it is that they're using the invasion frame for the threat. As if the country is under invasion, so therefore we need all the government and all of the machinery at its disposal to meet it. So when people tell me I've been doing this for a long time, what does it feel like? Does it feel like Trump won? It feels nothing like Trump won. It feels more like 9/11 to me, except that 9/11, we actually had an invasion. And in this case, we're using a manufactured invasion to have a militaristic response. So the militaristic response is A, the use of military planes. We have never used military planes in the past to deport people. They're actually not that effective. They're not that efficient. They cost 3 times what we would cost normally a charter flight to go to places like Brazil and India. But we want to create the image that there's an invasion and we're using the military in the enterprise to respond to that invasion. We are parading people with no reference to their faces, which we have never done before. Even news organizations deface the people or people who are when they're in chains. We actually show their full faces. We show their handcuffs. We show their chains and their ankles. And we now started issuing videos from the DHS, which is martial music that goes with it. So it's the optics, and optics now with orchestrated music in a militaristic tone that has become the modus operandi of this administration. So how did they get to this? Obviously, you probably by now, I just counted this morning. I think the administration has issued about 107 executive actions since he became president. They go from everything from, getting rid of TPS to the parole programs for Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans. It's a whole spectrum. But the two of the most important things that the administration did, which has helped them in this machinery, was on day one, they rescinded Biden administration's prosecutor discretion memo, which that administration never got enough credit for what they did. But if you ask me, what was the most defining thing about that administration in terms of immigration is that MPI's estimate was that their prosecutorial discretion memo was so well implemented, accurately all across the country, that about 87% of the unauthorized had nothing to fear, that they could actually wake up in the morning, go to work, and come back to work with full confidence that they would see their children again. That the priority was only dangerous criminals and recent arrivals. If you didn't fit those categories, you were safe. So that's existential. This administration ended that memo, so everyone now is a priority. If everyone is a priority, no one is a priority. You go after the lowest hanging fruit. And even if you go after a targeted criminal for whom you have a warrant, but if you meet other people there, what we now call increasingly these collaterals, they're also fair game. So therefore, everyone from a landscaper to a health aid worker to someone working in the front, they're all equal in the eyes of this administration for removal. A fundamental change from a month ago. The second is that they issued the guidance allowing expedited removal to apply to the whole of the country, which means anyone who has been here for less than 2 years and is caught anywhere in the country. In the past, it used to be within 100 miles of the border. Now does not even have to go to an immigration judge for a hearing. We put them in expedited removal. They can be removed by an order of the DHS official. The only exception to this, of course, is that they can apply for asylum. How easy they can invoke is a different story, but that's legally the only exception in expedited removal. So you therefore have a totally new sort of legal arsenal at your disposal to feed into the deportation machinery. Now, let me tell you what they're doing. I've been asked a lot about why they're doing this with Panama and Costa Rica. I've spent a lot of time talking to the press. And it's a very interesting analysis. They're doing it for 3 reasons. It's not that they particularly have a dislike for Panama or Costa Rica. They're doing it for 3 reasons. First, when you send people outside the jurisdiction of the United States, the US Constitution doesn't apply, US laws don't apply, US regulations don't apply. So anyone who wanted to represent, that is gone. They're out of the country. 2 is that they're increasingly losing capacity for detention, which many of us knew a long time ago, that there's limited capacity for detention. The Congress has only authorized detention beds about 41 to 42,000 a day. So you meet that capacity, then you have no place to keep detainees. So sending them to Costa Rica takes care of the capacity issue. The third is less appreciated, is that not all countries in the world take their deportees. There are countries that are resistant to taking their own nationals. We call these recalcitrant countries in legal parlance. So by sending them to Panama, it's now Panama's headache to negotiate with those countries. So we have saved a lot of time of our diplomats and outsourced that to the Panamanian government. These three reasons apply both to Panama and to Costa Rica. With Panama, there were two additional reasons for doing it. First, it didn't lose sight for any of us that Marco Rubio, as Secretary of State, made his first trip to Panama, armed with the threat that we might actually attack the Panama Canal. And basically, Panamanian President, what do you want us to do, Mr. President? So as I said about the first paragraph in each cabinet member's job description, it's now become the first talking point in every government's negotiation with Trump. We know we have to get something from you. You want us to help you on the deportation machinery. Mr. President, where would you like us to sign? And we'll be willing partners in the global machinery. So that was one straight threat to the Panamanian government, that if you don't do this, you are in jeopardy. And Panama, I'm sure all of you know, is critical in the migration journey to the United States because of the Darien Gap. The Darien Gap is the main artery for migrants from many parts of the world, Asia, Africa, Central Asia, South Asia, to come from Panama to Colombia, then on their way to the Mexican border. So controlling the Darien Gap is a huge part of the enterprise. So it sends a message to the Panamanian government, sends a message to all immigrants who would be potentially coming through the Darien Gap that Panama is no longer the friend you thought it was going to be. So this is sort of the global machinery. But there are constraints, even in this global machinery. One is that the Constitution is still well and alive in our country. People who get arrested have right to go for habeas corpus to a federal district court judge. If they are even after that, they are in detention, people have right to go to get an immigration hearing and get an appeal for that. And that can take time, but government cannot deport you while you are in the process of seeking that hearing. The second is capacity has now become a real issue, that they don't have places to keep people. That's why Guantanamo is looked at the option. But Guantanamo is still in the US. US Constitution still applies there. That's why Panama is better than Guantanamo for this purpose. So they're now thinking about military bases all across the country for possibilities. But we know they're already under constraint there because when you detain US citizens, especially kids, there are certain standards you have to meet for detention. Some of them are straight in the guidelines, and some of them are court-dictated settlements which now impose restrictions on what kind of licensing arrangements you can have for detention. So that's a capacity issue. So they're really looking everywhere they can, from federal prisons to naval bases, to Air Force bases, to house deportees. And then there's resistance. And the resistance has been slow to come, but it's growing. And I'll come to that in a second. So you would ask me now, so having done this machinery that they have unleashed in the last one, what is the outcome? Where does reality meet the rhetoric? And I have to tell you, this is how overreaching they are. They're underperforming. That if you really first look at the number of people who are arriving at the border, in the whole month of January, only 29,000 people came to the border. That's the lowest it has been since spring of 20 when COVID hit. So fewer people already coming. Fewer people, therefore, to remove at the border. So we didn't expect the numbers would drop that precipitously, but this is sort of where the image of the machinery, I think, is taking hold. Fewer people are coming. Now among arrests, Trump himself personally hit targets that you must get me 1,000 people a day. In the initial 4 or 5 days, they got 1,000 people a day. But in the first 2 weeks, which is the numbers that are available now, they arrested only 8,000 in 2 weeks. So the numbers started declining. And reporting suggests that since 2 weeks, the numbers have gone down. So he was so disappointed that he actually reassigned his own hand-picked head of ICE because he was disappointed with his results. So they know that there's a problem in the targets. And if you look at deportations, they have now stopped issuing, first of all, those of you who follow DHS's website, they have stopped issuing the numbers on how many people they're removing. I tell them that if the numbers are dropping, so is their entry at the DHS website dropping. But now the reports from Reuters, I think yesterday, was that they deported only 37,000 people in the first month of the administration. If you want a comparison, Biden administration in the last year deported an average of 57,000 people a month. So Sleepy Joe was much more active at the border in deporting people than the handsaw, Musk is with all his might. So they're underperforming. Their rhetoric is the message that I'm trying to communicate. It doesn't mean it will stay like this. I'm just telling you in the first month of record, that's where we are. The president has 3 audiences for his action. One is his base, and the base is promises made, promises kept. I told you good. This is why the militaristic optics are being thrown out. Second is people who may think about coming to the U.S., to the border. And there it might be working because fewer people are coming. And the last audience is people who are already here, unauthorized, 13.6 million people, that they will get so scared that they will, on their own, self-deport. They have this image that people will start self-deporting. We have seen no evidence of that so far, but that is their goal. Now, obviously, there are resistance to this action. To me, other than people sort of writing to members of the Congress, which hasn't been there, there are 2 basic resistance. One is litigation. 19 lawsuits have been brought on immigration by various actors from the ACLU to church groups to immigrant defense organizations to attorneys general of the states in the last 1 month. 2 of them have already been successful. One, good to tell you, was about a church that a federal district court in Maryland yesterday said that the executive order that allowed, that in the past had forbidden ICE to go to what we call sensitive locations like hospital, churches, schools, and courthouses, that is now being given a temporary restraining order on the basis of that churches have the First Amendment right to worship, and this is impeding worship. And this afternoon, a federal district court in Washington gave a temporary restraining order on the ban of refugees from coming to the United States. So victories are already mounting. There are 9 suits brought on ending birthright citizenship. 4 have already succeeded. We'll see how that goes. But so far, litigation results are against the administration. So the last thing I'll say is what you folks are doing is not litigation, which is what I call retail lawyering. What is now coming between Trump's cruelty and people who are victims of the cruelty are lawyers and legal service providers. That's much more important than litigation. Litigation can stop policies. But when you talk about people invoking their own right against removal, that can only happen by individual lawyers. With huge respect to ACLU, they don't send individual lawyers to represent a single individual in a proceeding. That is done by organizations like this. So multiply these organizations, that's the force. As I have never felt better about members of my own tribe as lawyers, but lawyers and legal service providers have now become the foot soldiers in the fight against this cruelty, and I salute you all for doing that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that presentation. It was great. At this time, we're going to take some questions. So I think the way we'll work is we have someone will passing around the mic as people raise their hands, and we already see a person down here, and the microphone's coming to you shortly. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. It was a very informative presentation. Your comment about statuses is of great concern to me, which is that everyone seems to be put in the same pot right now. I'm wondering if your sense is that people will apply for asylum status, and that will bog up the cases that are being reviewed already.
Yeah, I mean, so there was, I hope it was clear that the protection for asylum still applies.
I understand that, but I'm concerned about
Yeah,
volume.
so you say, will it impede people who are ahead of, who are in the queue before them, is that right?
I'm interested in the queue for both
I'm
asylum
sorry,
seekers.
there's acoustics, I can't hear you correct, but go ahead.
I'm sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's better, yeah.
Okay. If asylum seekers is a status that people will flee to because it's the only safe one, I'm wondering about the backlog on those cases, and also your opinion on what safely the other status subgroups can do. Someone who has applied, someone who has a work visa, they too right now could get picked up. Do you have any particular advice or guidance on the status issue?
Well, first on the asylum. You're right, asylum is one of the few things you can invoke even in expedited removal. But there again, it's very important that there's a difference between people who have been here more than a year. That the burden is much higher if you did not apply within 1 year of being in the country. They should be aware of that. They have to have changed conditions in the country why they didn't apply before. And so, so that's one option. The second is that even if they get denied asylum, they can still seek the right for withholding of removal, which is a different remedy, has a different standard. Withholding of removal. Withholding of removal does not give you the right to live in the United States forever, because an asylum seeker can then turn into a green card. Withholding of removal only prevents you from not being deported to a country where you feel unsafe. That's also true for if you think you're going to face torture. In fact, that's what, even at the end of the Biden administration, when we use the transit country rule, that you're really ineligible to apply for asylum if you came through a country on your way, you didn't apply for asylum there. But you still were eligible for withholding. So that still applies. So people have to be aggressively asking for the withholding, which not everyone is informed about because they've just heard the word asylum. So that's really also important to communicate to people. On other remedies, I think that's really case dependent. I mean, someone will have to sit with the client to see what other options they may have. That's too broad a question to respond to in a setting like this.
Yes.
Immigration judges have some discretion when people come for hearings, master hearings.
Please just take the mic.
I can clarify. I'll clarify.
Immigration judges have discretion when people come for master hearings. Like if they don't have an attorney yet, they can say, please report back next year. Is that a possible threat of removal of immigration judges?
So just to echo, the question was about the discretion of immigration judges, especially for folks who are unrepresented in the asylum process. When they get to that master calendar hearing, and the judge says, okay, we're gonna kick your case out to like 2027. I guess the question is sort of like evaluating the threat of that, and
will that stay?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there are people here who practice immigration law in courts day to day, and you should probably ask them. My understanding is that they still have the discretion, but it may not last very long. I think many of us fear, they have obviously dismissed a lot of judges. They have dismissed like 1/3 of the Board of Immigration Appeals. I think every Biden appointee was thrown out of the Board of Immigration Appeals. So they will try to refigure the immigration court system. But so far they can seek the discretion. What many of us fear is that they may really get rid of the immigration court system. There's some speculation that Executive Office of Immigration Review, as is bureaucratically called the Court of Immigration Judges, may be abolished, and that they will really make immigration judges like straight bureaucrats, like asylum officers are. So that talk of that hasn't happened as yet, but I'm just letting you know that that's in the conversation. And we know that during Trump 1, they politicized the Executive Office of Immigration Review hugely. They removed judges who were inconvenient to them. But, people went into appeal. They were not able to make that much of a dent. But if they go to change the structure of the immigration court system, which they have more ability to because they have a compliant Attorney General who supervises the Executive Office of Immigration Review. So the chances of something happening radically at the immigration court, I think, is real. All I can tell you, it hasn't happened as yet.
Hi, thank you. I'm wondering about what you know of the conditions of detention centers and what's going on there, and what is being done to guarantee human rights in detention centers nowadays.
To hear that, the question was about detention centers and sort of like what efforts are being done now to sort of ensure that people's human rights are being protected in those spaces.
Yeah, I think lawyers are still going to detention centers. I think what I understand that it's not that easy to get access to lawyers in detention centers because a lot of the detention centers are in places where lawyers are not that easily available. And we also know that the Know Your Rights presentations, which are done routinely, have also come under attack. So I think it's true that people in detention will have to be in, it's much more compromised. But they certainly have the ability to reach out to a lawyer. So is it the work that you're doing, if people ask me, so what is, which applies to detainees also, is that what's the one thing you should do if you yourself are unauthorized and under threat of some enforcement actions, or anyone that you know, is really keep the name of a lawyer at hand. Because once you at least invoke the right, look, I have a lawyer, and that lawyer is willing to represent me, then they have to give you access to that person. So just having access to a lawyer becomes the critical difference between whether you get removed quickly or no. I have the feeling no one has done any studies on the removals to Costa Rica and Panama. If you just read the profiles of those people, Iranian Christian families being sent back to Iran, and Afghan young women being sent to the Taliban, they would look like obvious cases, if not for asylum, at least for withholding. The issue to me was, did they invoke their right to withholding? And if they did invoke the right to withholding, and they were denied that right, then we did something wrong. We could have litigation on that and bring those people back, either in plaintiffs for violation of their rights. So that's why I think if they had a lawyer in that case, whom they had called, look, I'm really fearful of returning back to Iran, and that lawyer would have said, look, I'm going to represent the person, that would have made a difference. People are now beginning to do that in Panama. I mean, Panaman lawyers are now getting sort of engaged in this process. But US lawyers need to be engaged in that. For that, people really need to have a lawyer whose number they know, who they can call when they're in detention.
I have a question. How is the situation affecting applicants for the affirmative claims? Are they still being interviewed?
Yeah, so the question was about how the current circumstances are affecting people who are applying affirmatively. You know, have there been any differences? I guess essentially.
You mean people who make affirmative asylum applications?
Yes.
I have heard nothing to say that it's adversely affecting them. I think what I strangely understand that USCIS is functioning as if nothing happened, which may sound surprising to you, but it takes a lot of time for things to change. I mean, there's no political appointee for USCIS as yet. It's likely that if there's a political appointee, you would send a different signal to the asylum officers that you should look at the asylum cases differently. So far, no indication that asylum applications affirmatively are being treated any differently. That's all I can say. That sounds good news, or?
Thank you so much for your information. You spoke about some victories with regard to litigation, but what happens if and when the administration doesn't comply?
So the question is about sort of, given some of the victories that have already been won in litigation in this space, what happens in terms of enforcement, I guess? Like, what happens when the Trump administration decides not to comply with a favorable decision or order from the court?
I mean, that's beyond my pay scale. I mean, if we have clearly a situation where the president or any member of his cabinet declines to obey a court order, we are in a totally different realm. That's clearly a constitutional crisis. I mean, I don't use the word constitutional crisis loosely. Some people think we are in a constitutional crisis now. I don't think so. I think if that happens, we are in a constitutional crisis. So what we do then, you know, how quickly we go to the Supreme Court and how quickly the Supreme Court rules on it is going to be very, very important. I mean, that's so fundamental. All I can say is that, I mean, the cases that are moving the fastest are the birthright citizenship cases. I think there are 4 of them. They've landed up with the courts of appeal. They may get to the Supreme Court sooner. So we're all watching what will be the first Supreme Court case that will come. And I was really surprised last week that the Supreme Court did not give him a victory. The appointment of the Office of the Special Counsel, which is like a termed, like the FBI director, you know, the head of the Federal Reserve, those are terms for 5 years and 10 years, which go from one administration to the other. And they tried to remove the present one, and that case went to the Supreme Court, and he was not given a reprieve. I mean, I thought actually the case law on that was all in their favor. It was, to me, just a signal that they're not that keen to send a signal that this is going to be an easy path for you to come. But listen, I'm not Chief Justice Roberts. I probably think that he is a highly worried man these days, that he has to believe that all these things, including the question that you raise, may come to him. So I'm sure this is a big issue for the integrity and the reputation of this court. But we're not there as yet. Let me just, as long as you're talking about this, speak a word about the birthright citizenship. because a lot of people are concerned about it. Because the reason to be concerned about birthright citizenship is not only what it does to people who already, may be having babies and they may be fearful, but it has a huge ripple effect on the integration agenda. Is that if people born here to unauthorized people do not become US citizens, we then have a permanent underclass of non-citizens, which is a huge, people with no rights. They're not even citizens of any other country, they're not citizens of here. That's what makes America unique in the community of nations. So when people say they're only, to be blunt here, Canada is the only Western democracy which, unlike us, gives birthright citizenship. Most countries in the world, we inherited that principle from the British Crown. The Brits have abandoned that, in the 1970s. No European country has birthright citizens. There are about 32 countries in the world which almost all of them, other than Canada, are in South America or some parts of Europe. So it's a real issue. It may come up and I'm concerned about the integration. So where I think, and lawyers who tell you this is settled issue, the Constitution clearly says, 14th Amendment says that everyone born in the United States is a citizen. But I don't think it's a slam dunk, because Supreme Court has never directly ruled on the issue that someone born to unauthorized person in the United States is covered by the 14th Amendment. It says, you're born in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. So all the contest is, what does subject to the jurisdiction mean? So far, people think it only means diplomats, because they have diplomatic immunity, therefore they're not subject to laws. Therefore, that's the only exception. But Supreme Court has never said that. The only case the Supreme Court has taken up on this issue is the case, but that involved child of a person who was lawfully in the United States. So there's no direct precedent. But strangely, this administration shot themselves in the foot, to my mind, when they were issuing the executive order on birthright citizenship. They didn't just limit it to children of unauthorized, they also said children of people who are here on non-immigrant visas, like H-1Bs, Ls, students. They're also disqualified from being citizens. That, you would say, is beyond just what people may think is children of unauthorized. And I think the Supreme Court's last case on that does cover that children of people lawfully in the United States, even though they may not be citizens or green card holders, are eligible for citizenship. So they have muddied the waters, and therefore I feel a little better about it, even though the straight letter of the law is not that clear.
Thank you so much for all those questions and your responses on that, Muzaffar. I think we need to transition to our next panel.
We've exhausted people. So.
Yeah. Thank you again so much for sharing.
Thank you so much, and thanks for all that you do.
Thanks a lot. So I'm going to welcome to the stage Miguel Arrea. He is also a dedicated volunteer at ASC, as well as a steering committee member. Miguel is very experienced in this immigration space, and he's going to be moderating our next panel. So thanks. Is my mic on? Okay.
Tenemos el micrófono ahí para cuando quiere contestar la pregunta. Hi everyone. So I'm here today with Daniela and Daynor. They're two friends that we've helped file their asylum applications recently with ASC, and we're just going to speak to them about their experience with asylum, immigrating, and any of their hardships or anything that they find noteworthy about the experience. And this is Dana and Eleanor. I'm sorry, Daniela and Eleanor. Ok, entonces, a empezar, Daniela, ¿nos quieres decir un poco sobre su experiencia y su razón por emigrar a los Estados Unidos?
Buenas noches a todos. Bueno, mi experiencia aquí en los Estados Unidos ha tenido varias causales, han sido positivas y algunas negativas. El por qué estoy acá, primero porque yo creo que todos los seres humanos, todas las personas tenemos el derecho a triunfar en la vida, a generar cosas lindas para nuestra familia, y ya que en nuestro país, por situaciones que no deberían ser, se han presentado, tuve que tomar la decisión extrema de venirme pues para acá, para los Estados Unidos, dejando una niña de 7 años en ese momento, donde ha sido mi mayor afección moral, sentimental, emocional y demás.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, great. I'm going to be translating, so I'm typing because I'm not a professional, so excuse me if I do this. But I am Daniela. Good night to everyone. My experience here in the United States have been several causes, some positives and some negatives. Why I'm here, it is because all human beings have the right to thrive, to generate nice things for our families and create nice things for our families. Because of the situations in my home country that I shouldn't be experienced, I had to take the extreme decision to come here, leaving my daughter of 7-year-old at that moment has been my main moral and sentimental and emotional consequence.
Entonces, esto no era una decisión que hiciste fácil, esto era algo que el proceso también no era algo fácil, no era algo que solamente haces la decisión que hoy voy a ir a otro país a reempezar mi vida de nuevo. ¿Es correcto?
Es correcto. No es una decisión nada fácil, no lo fue, y porque ya como todos sabemos, cada persona de cada país tiene sus diferentes situaciones, y pues para mí dejar una niña, como les comentaba, de esa edad no fue nada fácil y no ha sido nada fácil. De lo contrario, de eso que me pasó, no hubiera emigrado pues acá pues a los Estados Unidos, y sé que es una potencia y aparte de eso es un país de oportunidades y podía salir adelante, como lo dije en un principio.
It hasn't been an easy decision. Everybody knows that, especially the ones that are coming from countries like mine and other different situations, in very different situations. To me, to leave my daughter at that age was the most difficult decision. It hasn't been easy. On the contrary, I would have been here in the United States. I know that this is a very good country. It's sort of a central for the world, but this country has an opportunity to thrive, so that's why I'm here.
Tengo la misma pregunta sobre su razón de venir a los Estados Unidos, y si nos quieres contar un poco sobre ese viaje o cualquier cosa del proceso.
Primeramente, dar gracias a Dios porque estoy en pie, estoy respirando y creo que esto es una gran ganancia. Hay mucho por qué agradecer. A pesar de que han pasado demasiadas cosas, últimamente ha sido como una montaña rusa. Han habido momentos buenos y momentos no tan buenos, pero creo que lo más importante es el aprendizaje. Todo lo que nos pasa nos ayuda a fortalecernos y a forjar nuestro carácter como personas. Quiero agradecer nuevamente por abrirme las puertas a esta gran nación. Gloria a Dios. Creo también que el mundo necesita más de Dios. El mundo necesita más amor. Hay muchas personas haciendo daño y como mi papá dice, nadie puede dar lo que no tiene. Pero somos agentes de cambio y en nuestras manos está que todo sea para bien. Muchas gracias.
First of all, thanks to God because I am here standing and breathing, and that's a gain that we can count on. There is a lot to appreciate and be thankful, even if I experience all of that I had. There have been moments, good moments and bad moments, but everything is to thrive, to make it stronger, and to actually make our character as it is. Thank you very much for this country to open the doors to me. Glory to God. How do you say glory to God? The world actually needs more of God. There is a lot of people actually making not good, and nobody can actually give what they don't have. We are change, agents of change, and we are in the hands of God, so we are and we are in their hands, so we can do good. Probably not.
También me gustaría agradecer, ya que he estado recibiendo atenciones médicas que en Honduras muy difícilmente podía tener acceso. Actualmente estoy atendiendo mi salud física y mi salud mental. Creo que es algo muy importante para el momento que uno tiene que relacionarse con otras personas, estar plenamente, sentirse pleno para uno poder transmitir esa energía, ya que también creo que los humanos somos energía. Y si alguien no está listo o capacitado para decirle algo bueno a alguien, mejor quedarnos callados para no transmitir energías negativas. Estoy un poco nervioso, pero yo sé que todo va a estar todas las cosas nos ayudan para bien. Otro de los accesos que he tenido es el acceso a la educación. Estoy aprendiendo otro idioma más y me siento orgulloso de ser garífuna y también me siento muy orgulloso de poder compartir con ustedes y aprender también su idioma.
I am really, really thankful because I also have received medical attention that it has been difficult in Honduras for me to have. I'm also treating my physical and mental health. It is important for me at this moment because this is the way that I can relate to other people better. Human beings are above energy, and if we're not ready to actually be in conversation with others, we shouldn't be doing that. I am a little nervous, to be honest, but everything is for good. I also had access to education. I am actually learning another language. I am very proud to be a Garifuna and share with you my experience here. I'm also very proud to be learning another language, and I appreciate that too.
Okay. Nuevamente, muchas gracias y que Dios los bendiga. Vamos a poder hacer muchas cosas grandes porque nacimos para cosas grandes. Bendiciones.
Once again, thank you very much and God bless you. We're going to make big things because we are born to make it.
Sí, gracias. Gracias por eso. Le quería preguntar un poco sobre el proceso del asilo. Como nosotros somos una clínica de asilo, como nos has dicho, cuando ustedes llegaron estaban escapando de su país, ¿sí? Que estaban en situaciones muy difíciles y que se tenían que escapar y venir a los Estados Unidos. Entonces, cuando llegaron, ¿cuáles recursos tenían cuando estaban buscando asilo? ¿Qué es lo que te dijeron en la frontera, la policía de inmigración o cualquier otra persona sobre qué se tenía que hacer sobre su aplicación de asilo?
Bueno, hablando sobre la aplicación de asilo, hablando sobre la fundación, a mí, pues, por mi experiencia, ha sido muy satisfactoria, ya que cuando yo llegué a la frontera, se presentó todas estas circunstancias que para nadie es fácil contarlas. No tenía plata, venía con poca ropa, venía yo con un niño de 3 años en manos, no tenía pues dinero cómo poder sustentar con un abogado. Gracias a esta fundación pude presentar mi asilo. Doy infinitamente gracias a ellos porque me ha salido todo como nunca lo pensé. Y también fui gracias a una chica que con ella nos vimos en la frontera. Ella también hizo su asilo acá, me lo recomendó mucho y más que eso me recomendó la labor, el valor que le dan acá a las personas, porque siempre desde un inicio lo tratan a uno con cariño, con amor, con bondad, que es lo más importante y lo que hace ver a las personas qué clase de personas, de personalidad tienen. Sé que ustedes como nación son muy buenos, así como nosotros también en nuestros países. No todos son malos, venimos a hacer cosas buenas, venimos con toda la buena actitud, con la buena energía. Simplemente que para todos las situaciones no son fáciles y como lo dice mi compañero, les doy muchas gracias y eternamente agradecido con Dios ante todo y con la fundación por haberme permitido sentar mi proceso de asilo.
Talking about the asylum application here at the foundation, my experience has been very satisfactory. When I got to the border and the circumstances are presented for me to tell what happened, it wasn't easy to tell. I didn't have any clothing. I had my kid that was 3 years old at that point. I didn't have any money. I couldn't hire a lawyer. So thanks to the foundation, I could actually present my application. I give many thanks to them because it has been as I haven't expected. It was thanks to a girl that I met at the border. She actually told me about this organization. She had done her application here. She recommended it a lot, but actually she recommended it the value and the accompaniment that they give to people. Since the very beginning, they treat me with love because that is what is important. This is what actually you can see the kind of people that they are and the personality they have. I know that you are a nation of good people. We are, in our countries, not everybody's a bad person, and we are a good people, and we come to do good. We come with all the attitude and the good energy, even if the situations are not easy. As my colleague here said, thank you very much before God and to the foundation to have allowed me to apply for asylum.
¿Quieres contestar? ¿Sí?
Personalmente quisiera agradecer a cada uno del personal. Me acuerdo del nombre de Edgar Ochoa, muchísimas gracias. No sé si se encuentra aquí esta noche. También quiero agradecer a Emera, que es trabajadora social voluntaria. Muchísimas gracias a Caroline también y a cada una de las personas que estuvo cada una de las semanas escuchando, escribiendo y dándole seguimiento al proceso. Muchísimas gracias nuevamente. Solo quiero agradecer. Gracias.
I just wanted to thank to everybody in this organization. I remember Edgar Ochoa, also Emera, who was a volunteer. Thank you very much to Caroline as well, and to every person who every week was here listening to my story and giving, following up on my process. Thank you very much.
Sí, gracias a ustedes también, porque nosotros entendemos que es un proceso muy difícil y que no le trata como persona cuando cruzas la frontera, cuando estás yendo a donde tienes que ir después. Entendemos, y por eso es lo que nosotros hemos tratado de hacer en este espacio, a tratarla como persona y ayudarle como si era nuestra familia. También le quería preguntar, porque ustedes entregaron su aplicación dentro de un año, no sé si todos saben, pero hay que entregar su aplicación de asilo dentro de un año. Y lo hicieron, pero le quería preguntar sobre a dónde sigue su caso ahora, si ya más de un año, si ya lo han recibido, si te han dado decisión o si han avanzado en el corte.
Bueno, mi caso ha sido un poco complejo el tema. Aunque senté mi proceso de asilo, tuve los grandes beneficios que fue pues mi permiso de trabajo, que me llegó hace poco, hace menos de un mes, acompañado del Social Security. Ha sido un tema bastante complejo en el sentido que en la frontera se equivocaron y no me asignaron juez. A algunas personas nos pasa, no soy la única, pero desafortunadamente me pasó y no tengo fecha de corte, ya que no tengo ni siquiera juez asignado. Solamente he ido muy cumplida a mis citas de ICE. Ahorita la próxima cita que tengo es el 2 de julio. Iré cumplidamente, como es lo debido. Y ya esperando con la voluntad de Dios que rápido me asignen un juez y que pueda ir a una corte y presentar mis evidencias y demás.
Miguel was asking about the process of asylum and how any updates that they have about it. So Daniela says, well, my case is a little bit complex. I filed my asylum application and I had the benefit to apply for the work authorization. I actually got that about a month ago, that it was also coming with the Social Security. But it has been very complex because at the border they actually made a mistake and they didn't assign me a judge. That's something that happens, unfortunately, to many people. I don't have a date in court, so I always go to my ICE appointments. The next one that I have is in July 2nd. I will go as it is my duty, but I'm hoping that with the will of God, that they will assign me a judge, and then I can go to court and present my evidence, and so on.
¿Cuál era la pregunta?
Si nos querías dar un poco de noticias sobre cómo sigue su caso de asilo, de cuánto tiempo ha estado aquí y qué es lo que estás esperando en el momento.
El caso el formulario se envió el 23 de octubre del año anterior, del 2024. Estoy nervioso, no sé por qué. Actualmente estoy esperando lo que es el permiso de trabajo y el seguro social. Estoy muy emocionado porque tengo bastantes ideas en mente que quisiera ejecutar. Tengo bastantes ideas de emprendimientos, las cuales quisiera llevar a cabo también. Pero he aprendido a vivir un día a la vez, sin apresurarme y a esperar con paciencia, ya que el que sabe esperar, Dios le bendice y todas las cosas ayudan para bien. Por otra parte, no ha sido, lo siento, estoy bien nervioso, me disculpo nuevamente.
I can translate while you wait. I filed my application on October 23rd last year in 2024. I am actually very nervous, I'm so sorry. Actually, I'm waiting for my work authorization and the social security number, and I'm really, really excited because I have a lot of ideas in mind. I have a lot of ideas of entrepreneurship, and I really want to execute. But I have learned that I need to live without rush, and I need to wait with patience. And I know that the ones who wait, God bless them. And then he was also nervous, so I translate.
Otra de las cosas, creo que ya lo dije anteriormente, pero una de las cosas más importantes que he aprendido es a tener paciencia, ya que la paciencia es una virtud y es un fruto del Espíritu Santo. Recuerdo que al segundo día que vine yo ya quería tener casa, yo ya quería tener pareja, yo ya quería tener dinero, yo ya quería tener carro, yo ya quería tenerlo todo. Pero estoy aprendiendo que es un día a la vez y con esfuerzo y con perseverancia es que se consiguen las cosas realmente.
One of the things that I have learned here is patience, and that's a virtue. It's the fruit of the Holy Spirit. In the second day that I arrived here, I wanted to have a house, a partner, money, a car. I want it all. But I'm learning that it's one day at a time, with a lot of effort and perseverance.
No tenemos mucho tiempo, pero los invitamos hoy porque queríamos enseñarles a todos que estas son las personas que están en el proceso, que son miembros de nuestra comunidad, que son personas, porque muchas veces siente que se falta la humanidad en el proceso de inmigración. Entonces, si hay algo que le quieres decir a la audiencia ahorita sobre usted, sobre el proceso, sobre inmigración, cualquier cosa usted quiere decir.
Bueno, pues, primero que todo, mi mensaje es, como muchos de nosotros somos personas que venimos a hacer el bien, dar primero que todo las gracias de nuevo por las miles de oportunidades, por las personas que nos han apoyado, que han estado con nosotros. En este momento pues se me había pasado a darle las gracias a Kichi porque fue la que estuvo conmigo, y así no entendamos el mismo idioma, siempre fue muy calurosa conmigo y me sentí como en casa. Quiero decirles que, agradecer, decir que vale la pena hacer el proceso de asilo acá, que vale la pena tener fe, tener paciencia, hacer las cosas con todo el amor del mundo, con respeto hacia una nación, con toda la responsabilidad que merece estar acá, y que nos den la oportunidad a muchos inmigrantes de conocer nuestros corazones, porque yo sé tanto como cuando estaba en mi país y llegaban quizás a hacer el mal algunas personas, también hay otras que sabemos hacer el bien y que podemos dar mucho para esta nación en lo que nos permita estar acá. Muchas gracias, y de nuevo mil gracias a la Fundación por esta oportunidad.
My message is this. Like many of us that we came to do good, we would like to say thank you for the opportunity and all the support that we have been given. I really want to say thank you to Kathy, a volunteer who was with me in my asylum application. Even if we didn't speak the same language, I felt loved, and she was very caring with me, and I felt at home. I wanted to say thank you, and that is worth to make the process and filing for asylum here. It is also worth to have faith and be patient and do the things that you need to do with love for the world and respect to this nation. With all the responsibility that you need to have and the opportunity that you're given to immigrants, you should know our hearts. I know that when I was in my country, there were people that were doing bad things, but there are a lot of people like me who knows and wants to do good. And we can do it, and we can give a lot to this nation if you allow us. Thank you very much. Again, thank you very much to the Foundation for this opportunity.
Fe, esperanza y amor. Creo que son los frutos más poderosos. Dios nos dejó la Biblia, creo que es el manual más claro para que podamos seguir su camino. No soy perfecto, he cometido muchísimos errores, pero no quiero justificar de esa manera. Pero creo que la Biblia es el mejor manual para que podamos vivir de manera correcta. Nuevamente, muchas gracias.
Faith, hope, and love. Those are the most powerful fruits. God left the Bible, and that's it's the clearest manual for us to go forward. I am not perfect, and I'm not justifying this, but the Bible is a great manual to live in a correct way. And again, thank you very much.
I believe now we're going to transition to a question and answer with the audience, if anyone has any questions. Ahora vamos a seguir con las preguntas. You just go ahead, raise your hand. There's someone going around with the mic.
What nations do these two people originate in?
Where are they from, each of them?
¿Qué quieren saber de cuáles países inmigraron?
Colombia.
Garífuna de Honduras.
It's not a question, but I want to thank both of them to share their story here with us. I think especially those that maybe don't work with migrants. It's really important to have a face, to know that we're not just talking about numbers. Quiero decirles las gracias a ustedes que vinieron hoy a compartir sus historias. Creo que es muy importante, especialmente por los de nosotros que no trabajamos con migrantes directamente, que conozcamos las personas que no solo son números, sino son gente con una historia larga como ustedes dos. Así que muchas gracias.
Gracias. Claro que sí.
I'm sure that the process varies with different cases, but how long does it typically take for someone who's applying for asylum?
La pregunta era que entiende que es muy diferente para cada persona, pero ¿cuánto tiempo dura la aplicación? Si usted quiere, yo lo puedo contestar. Creo que yo sé un poco más. No, yo tengo.
The question was for you.
Yeah, no, I was just explaining to them. So it really depends. I think right now, on average, it's about 18 to 20 months is the average case. But having been in this space for 9-10 years now, a long time, I would say it's fairly common that from the day they enter to their final hearing, at least 2 years, I would say. And we've seen some cases that have gone on for upwards of 7 to 10 years.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm curious if they have their working papers and if they've been able to get work, or what are some of the challenges if they haven't been able to find work around finding work.
Su pregunta era si ustedes han conseguido su permiso de trabajo, si han podido trabajar de que han estado aquí y qué son y qué han sido algunos problemas o lo difícil de conseguir o trabajar en este país.
Actualmente estoy esperando lo que es el permiso de trabajo y el seguro social. Hacen falta, creo que aproximadamente un mes. Una de las mayores complicaciones, honestamente, ha sido las largas distancias, ya que Honduras yo creo que es solo un barrio de Brooklyn. Todo Honduras es un solo barrio de Brooklyn. A veces tengo que recorrer 3 horas o 2 horas para llegar a un solo lugar. Otra cosa que he podido ver que hay mucha diferencia es si antes durante el día hacía 5 actividades, aquí solo me da chance para 2 por las grandes distancias. Entonces estoy aprendiendo a manejar mejor el tiempo y conociendo mejor el entorno.
Currently, I'm waiting for my work authorization and the social security number. I think I need to wait for a month. One of the most complicated things that I have been facing, honestly, has been the long distances. In Honduras, one neighborhood can be Brooklyn, or the whole neighborhood can be Brooklyn. But sometimes here I need to actually commute for 2 or 3 hours to go to one place. And another thing that has been different from my experience is that if before, in one day I could do like 5 activities, now I can only do 2. I am learning to manage my time and knowing better my environment.
Bueno, en mi experiencia yo llegué al país el 17 de julio del 2023 con un niño de 2 años en ese momento. Lo primero que cuando entré a la frontera me dijo el oficial: tú no puedes trabajar porque no tienes permiso para trabajar en este país, entonces ya tienes que hacerlo debido. Bueno, con el niño de 2 años pues prácticamente era casi imposible trabajar. Entonces pues no pude laborar, primero por eso, segundo porque pues obviamente no tenía pues el permiso. Es muy complicado, además cuando tú no conoces a nadie pues en el país es muy difícil que muchas personas le den la oportunidad a uno. Sí me pasó, sí quise de pronto hacer algunas horas, pero fue muy difícil, no me dieron la oportunidad de hacerlo por la experiencia. Pero bueno, fueron pasando los días y lo único que pude llegar a hacer fue cuidarle unos bebés a unas conocidas que venían de Colombia. Eso fue lo único que hice. Con lo que pude yo enviarle a mi niña, como yo les había comentado a ustedes desde un inicio, que tengo una niña de 7 años, enviarle algo para su manutención. Eso fue lo único que pude hacer. Y ahorita estoy en vísperas de poder laborar ya con mi permiso de trabajo porque me llegó, como les contaba, hace menos de un mes. Entonces la idea es hacer las cosas bien desde un principio, no hacerlas mal. Entonces ya con mi permiso y el social que van de la mano, poder que me den la oportunidad de laborar como lo es debido.
In my experience, I arrived to this country on July 17, 2023, with a 2-year-old at that moment. The first thing when I got into the border, it was that the official told me, you are not allowed to work. You have to do the right thing. You don't have an authorization to work. So with a kid of 2 years old, it was impossible to work. I couldn't do it at the very beginning because I was taking care of my kid. And the second reason why I couldn't is because I didn't have the authorization. It is really complicated. In addition to that, when you don't know anyone in this country, it is really difficult for people to give you the opportunity to work. It happened to me. I actually wanted to do some hours, but it was really difficult because I didn't have the experience here. And the only thing that I could do was to take care of 2 babies from someone that I knew from Colombia. That was the only thing that I did. And with that, I could send some money to my daughter in Colombia. And as I told you, I have a daughter in Colombia, so that was the way that I could actually send a little bit of money. And now I have my work authorization that I have received a month ago, and the idea is to actually work now. And since the very beginning, I wanted to do the right thing. So with my authorization and the social, I can actually have the opportunity to work as it is allowed.
And just to add a little bit of context for people who aren't aware of the process, is that asylum seekers aren't allowed to apply for a work permit until after the asylum application is submitted, about 150 days after. And so you are expected to get to this country, somehow file for asylum. For most people, that's difficult to do without a lawyer because operations like this are few and but so limited, and you're expected to file for your asylum application and also your work permit without any way of getting funds. And it's also something that work permits are something that has become very politicized and have been withheld punitively previously by the Trump administration, and that's something that we expect to see again. Solamente le estaba explicando sobre que no se puede entregar, no se puede meter la aplicación hasta que has terminado su aplicación de asilo. Y después, entonces, esa es la espera.
Algo importante también que me gustaría resaltar es el hecho de los accesos, hablando de los accesos a los que he tenido acceso a alimentación, he tenido acceso a educación, he tenido acceso a transporte, a Metrocard también, he tenido acceso a conocer personas maravillosas, personas con ideas buenísimas. También otro de los accesos que he tenido es el hecho de poder circular libremente y con respeto por la ciudad.
Something very important that I wanted to highlight about the access to rights is that I have had access to food, education, transportation, to a Metrocard. I have also had access to wonderful people with wonderful ideas. And something also that I wanted to mention is that I have access to like circulate freely and walk freely and with respect within the city.
If there are no other questions, are you okay with wrapping up, Sherry? Yeah. Okay. Creo que hemos terminado, que ya no tienen preguntas.
Si ustedes quieren decir algo también.
No, únicamente agradecerles a ustedes por escucharnos, por escuchar un poco de esta historia, porque es una historia muy extensa que duraría horas y horas y horas acá para contarla. Pero nada, muchísimas gracias. Si tienen alguna duda, pues nos pueden preguntar. Y nada, feliz noche.
I just wanted to say thank you for listening just a bit of my story, because if I told the whole story, it will be so long that we will take hours and hours and hours to tell. But thank you very much, and if you have any question, please feel free to ask me. And happy night.
Gracias a Dios porque nos tiene aquí en pie. Gracias a cada uno por tomarse su tiempo, ya que el tiempo es muy valioso de estar aquí en esta noche, y gloria a Dios por todo.
Thank you very much to God, to everybody here that is standing still. Thank you for taking the time, because I know the time is value, and thanks to God and glory God.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sherry Levine. I'm the program manager for ASC. I just have a few quick thank yous and a few quick reminders of how to get involved. Can people hear me? Great. Okay, so first, a big round of appreciation to all of tonight's speakers. We are so grateful. A big shout out to Rutgers Presbyterian Church, which is ASC's fiscal sponsor and physical host, as well as to In the Sanctuary, the Tuesday night program that agreed to co-host this event with us, to the ASC Steering Committee, many of whom are here tonight, to Supervising Attorney Seth Park, who's also here, and definitely, last but not least, the planning committee that put tonight's event together, and they're all here, and you can thank them. They can raise their hands. Kitty, Ellen, Emma, Lane, Karen, and Nancy M. We're really appreciative of all their effort. Thank you, thank you. And quick reminder of ways to get involved with ASC and asylum seekers. So you have the one-page handout, and it explains 4 key ways. One, you can make a donation to the clinic, and there's a table in the back that'll let you know all the ways you can make a donation to the clinic. You can volunteer with the clinic. There might not be a role for everybody who signs up for this cycle, but there's another cycle. And so if you're interested in getting involved, sign up on the volunteer form, and we'll figure out a role for you in this clinic cycle or a next. You can disseminate the WhatsApp number to anybody you think is interested in applying for asylum or is connected with folks who are interested in applying for asylum. And then we can take it from there. And you can introduce the clinic to organizations who you think might make good partners with ASC. We partner with a tremendous number of organizations, but we're interested in partnering with more so that we can serve asylum seekers in this city well. So thank you again for coming. We really appreciate it, and for your support of asylum seekers and ASC. Have a good night. Thank you.